forget that we had empathy, clarity? Now every truth is drowned beneath the sea of vanity. Do you feel proud up in your tower built on fear and doubt? The sky is falling, they just smile, never call it out. Whoa, can't be it, this can't be it now. Whoa, can't be it, this can't be it now. Whoa, the bombs just never end. They detonate inside my head, tearing up my generation. Whoa, they fed us all a lie, buried truths until they die, leaving nothing but a salutation. Do you remember we had dignity, sanity, a world to trust instead of biting fingers till they bleed? Do you find joy in all your shallow hell of empty noise? Our world is burning, but they'll keep on selling broken toys. Whoa, can't be it, this can't be it now. Whoa, can't be it, this can't be it now. Whoa, the bombs just never end. They detonate inside my head, tearing up my generation. Whoa, they fed us all a lie, buried truths until they die, leaving nothing but a salutation. Did you forget that we had empathy, clarity? Now every truth is drowned beneath the sea of vanity. Do you feel proud up in your tower built on fear and doubt? The sky is falling, they just smile.
I didn't know you went to church.
Oh, yeah. We go every Sunday. Yeah, ever since we moved to Austin.
Is it like a real Texan church? Like with Bible thumpers and...
Well, the people are, more conservative than like LA people or like New York.
Is that weird for you?
Why would it be weird?
I don't know. If I was just around a bunch of Texans who voted for Trump, I guess I'd just feel a little alienated.
They're nice people. Really good families.
Cool.
But do you ever talk politics with them?
Sometimes.
Oh, it doesn't get awkward?
Why would it?
Because. Wait. Are you a Republican?
No. I'm an independent. But Dave is.
An independent? Since when?
You didn't vote for Trump, though, did you?
Are we really going to talk about Trump tonight?
Check, check, mic check. Womp, 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 womp. You know, I've lost my Price is Right womp, womp sound. Any lip readers in the chat? Good morning, everyone. Rise and freedom. AP for Liberty here. Glad and thankful to have you here. Welcome to the Wake Up America show. Click that like button just out of, just out of loyalty, not because I deserve it, because I should be ashamed of myself. Look down at the chat, he says, using this is why I have the chat like all over the place, just in case, because there's nobody running this show. It's just me. All right, guys, let's talk about the news. Last week in Iowa, I read a story about this average guy who was standing over dog poop, and he was holding a $30 pooper scooper that had just snapped in half. The little plastic tabs on it gave out, and he was back to picking up poop with the bag with his hand. A few years ago, the scooper would have gone in the trash, and then he would have had to order another one off of Amazon, pay another $30, and then there would have been another big piece of plastic going to a landfill just because a 50-cent piece on his pooper scooper had broken. Instead, this guy walks inside, he fired up a printer, he made the broken piece himself, and then he snapped it back on. And he says that thanks to the piece that he was able to manufacture in his own garage, that it was stronger than the day that he bought it. Now, that printer on his desk is like a factory that is smaller than a microwave. And in garages all over the country, and right here in the For Liberty Shop store right there, you can see behind me, you can see there's a quiet revolution going on in our country. And it's all tied up also into this conversation about the right to fix our own things without having to ask a company for permission or wait for a boat from China to deliver the product so that we can have it here. So then after we talk about 3D printing this morning and the revolution happening in our garages, we're going to head north of the border. 5 million people just north of Montana are about to try the same move on a scale that no garage can match. Alberta pumps more oil than the rest of Canada combined, and it has the highest income in their country. And on October 19th, they're going to go to the polls. Now, the first question voters see could start the province down the road to being out of Canada completely, seceding from Canada. Now, I know the Libertarians are going to be really happy about that. Good morning, Dave's fan. Welcome, fellow patriot. Glad to have you here. So the first question that they're going to see, could start them down the road to secession. More than 220,000 people have already signed their names to put that question in front of them. Ottawa has spent decades making sure Alberta would never actually ask this question, but they're asking now. And the dollar in your wallet got put on trial this last weekend. JD Vance says that the whole world wanting our money is a sweet deal when you're buying, but it's taking a beating when you're the one still building things in this country. So economist Phil Magness says that that's protection, talking itself into wrecking the strongest asset America has, which is our dollar. Magness is going to join us in the second half to break it all down at 8 a.m., the great debate over the dollar. Then there's Sam Brown. Now, I found this young man through a viral reel where he was talking about his conversion from being an anti-Israel libertarian, where he was dead sure that he had it all figured out, but then after watching Charlie Kirk get murdered, and then half the internet blames Mossad before the body's cold, Sam started wondering what else the people he trusted had sold him. So he got on a plane, flew to Israel, and looked for himself. He came home calling himself a Zionist. And he's going to tell you exactly what flipped him. The Wake Up America show has got some phenomenal guests for you today on the show. Don't miss a single minute, unless my microphone doesn't work, and then you can skip over that part. So click the like button this morning, guys. And if today's the first time you've ever watched the Wake Up America show and you say to yourself, this is a great show, I'd love to hang out with this crew again, click the follow button so that you can come back and join us for our live schedule, which is Mondays through Fridays, 7 to 9 a.m. Central Time. That's the Wake Up America show, and we're sticking to it. All right, so I read this great piece last week, and I couldn't wait to talk to you guys about it, about Travis Regatz, who was fixing his pooper scooper. His little plastic tabs had broken off, And he went back to having to pick up poop by hand. Well, 10 years ago, he said you would throw that pooper scooper away. You'd have to order another one. You'd have to wait a couple of days and then add more plastic to the landfill just because of the 50-cent part that had broken. Well, Regat says that instead of doing that, he walked into his garage, he fired up his 3D printer, he made the part himself, snapped it on, and then says that the thing is now stronger than it was when he bought it. Probably was using PETG for that. Good morning, Maria. Welcome. Glad you made it with us this morning. So, but that little story about him fixing his pooper scooper is now happening in garages and basements and Liberty shops all over the country. People are printing washing machine parts. How many times have you had a little plastic piece go missing for some important task and you just thought, well, this is a 50-cent piece, but you're going to have to order it, pay for a whole entire other piece. Well, people are fixing their own plastic parts thanks to the miracles of 3D printing. Again, you can see that beautiful bamboo P2S over there. And before I get you guys all super excited about 3D printing and you say to yourself, Austin, should I just buy the one that Austin Petersen has? Well, maybe, depending on what you're going to use it for. So before you guys go off half-cocked and just buy that one because I have it, if you really are interested in getting your own 3D printer, don't just go off half-cocked and buy one. I've done all the research and I've done all the homework, so I'll talk to you guys a little bit about that at the end of this segment and make my recommendations to you based on any questions that you might have, and we can talk about that a little bit later. But, couch levers. So we have a cute little 2-year-old girl who loves to run around, and she loves to come in and disturb me at work. And for a while, we were buying these. I won't say they're expensive, but they're not exactly cheap. The little door handle locks to prevent the toddler from getting out of their own room or coming into the office. Well, instead of having to get on Amazon or make a trip to Walmart, burn more gas, spend more money than you would have bought just for the thing because you got to factor in the time and the energy, I just went over to makerworld.com and I downloaded the little plastic door stopper, and I installed the door stopper, and it cost me 25 cents. Amazing. So, levers for your doors, child locks, door locks, air conditioner vents, full air conditioner vents, air vent filter, air filter holders, broom caps, drawer organize. The drawer organizing community it's shocking how big the community is just for door organizing. There's a whole section of the 3D printing community who their only fascination and obsession is taking a picture of every object that they have and making it a little space in their drawer where the exact thing goes. If you are highly autistic and you love things to be super hyper organized, boy, oh boy, are you in luck, because there is an entire community devoted to putting every single object that you have in a place that is set and fit and cut out exactly for it. So yeah, something to think about. So drawer organizers. So whatever little piece of plastic, some company wants $30 and 3 days to ship to you. And I love this because this may be one of the most American uses of technology that we've seen in years. It's not, depending on which community you get into, not another app that wants your data. Now, Bamboo Labs, the people who make my printer, they are a little bit more closed system. It's kind of like the Apple of the 3D printing community, where they're very much about their proprietary technology. It's not very open source, but there are lots of open source alternatives to 3D printing. Brad says, I broke the handle on my 3D printer and I made a new one with my 3D printer. See, exactly. You can use a 3D printer to print a 3D printer. You have infinite 3D printers. Maria Edenbo says, not fireplace parts. Please don't print 3D fireplace parts. Probably wise. Eric Wilson says, enshittification has made everyday tools and appliances nearly worthless. Well, see, there you go. And maybe it's because they used PLA, polylactic acid, instead of PETG, which is the much more strong version of plastic that you can manufacture whatever you like with. So it's just a machine sitting on your desk. It says you need a part, make it. Something doesn't fit your house, redesign it. right? The manufacturer is going to quote you $30 for 3 cents of plastic. Tell them thanks, but no thanks, right? This is decentralization with a heated nozzle. See, the old American instinct was fix it yourself, but the new technology has just given that instinct a factory. So let's start with the dog poop, because the plastic tabs broke off of this guy's pooper scooper almost immediately, but instead of throwing it out, he just prints new tabs himself. And the repaired version is the stronger version. So a mass-produced product failed, a guy improves it, and it becomes a big national story, right? And it's not just people printing the little dragons and Yoda heads anymore that you guys will see at the malls, tons of like plastic junk or fidget toys. Yeah, that's a big part of it, people printing toys. But the Wall Street Journal found hobbyists using these things for door locks, furniture, hinges, storage containers. The monitor that is the big giant monitor, you can't really see it here other than from this angle. You can see the top of the monitor right here. I needed a new monitor stand. I was using a shoebox for a number of years, and I needed a little extra storage, so I printed a beautiful monitor stand with storage on there, just cleaned up my desk. And it cost me, this monitor stand probably would have cost me maybe 30, 40 bucks for a plastic monitor stand. But now, because I was able to 3D print it, it took me a day, and it cost me, I don't know, maybe $4 or $5 worth of filament. That's the plastic that you use to put in there. But people are making all kinds of things, appliance parts, doing home repairs. The 3D printer is turning from a nerd toy into tiny hardware. It's really interesting to see what you can make with it. I brought you guys a little example of something that I made last night. Ashley says we made a light switch dimmer. Awesome. Which 3D printer do you guys have? I thought you guys would find this interesting, so I manufactured this last night. One of the more interesting things you can see if you look at it from this angle, let me just pull it. There we go, right there. See those little trees, those tree-looking things? Those are the supports. So whenever you have a part that's going to hang, whenever you're printing it, you have to print these little supports. And this is what I printed last night, and it took 4 hours. It would have been faster, but I had to change the filaments halfway through. And so I made this last night. You can see it's stuck, that's really good. You want it nice and stuck to your mat there. But listen to that. It's a very satisfying sound there. Ooh, there we go. Okay, so what is this? What are we looking at right here? Well, what this is I have dozens and dozens of hats, baseball hats. And so this is a wall hanger for my baseball hats. You can see the little tree supports right there. And you just take your tools. You can see I've got all my tools hanging off the side over there. I printed all those little attachments for my tools. Then you'll just take your tools and you just crack those out of there. And then you assemble these, put them together. Let's see. I don't want to break anything, but snap things together. And then I've got a whole wall mount for 6 more hats. And it took a few hours and is like 50 cents worth of filament. There was this other story that I read about this weekend about Corey Miller, and they're from Lynn, Missouri, which isn't too far apart. The release lever on this guy's sofa broke. Amazon wanted $30 for the replacement, but instead he said, nope. He spent a few cents on filament. He printed his own. 4 years later, the homemade lever that he made in his garage is still working. $30 versus pocket change. And the cheap one outlasted the store part, right? The Miller did not even start with some $3,000 industrial machine because his first printer cost about $100. You can get a printer these days from Micro Center on a good deal to get an Ender 3 Pro, for example, to get you guys started. That's what we first started our 3D printing business with, was the Ender 3 Pro. Now we have unlocked We've unlocked a new level of productivity with an upgraded machine that's enclosed. It's even got a little camera on the inside of it so you can watch, and it creates time-lapse videos of each of your prints, which is really cool. So this Miller guy that they interviewed for the Wall Street Journal says his first printer cost about $100. First, he was making Christmas ornaments and puzzles, and then he realized the thing could actually solve some real problems around his house. It's kind of the gateway drug here. First, you print a dragon or a fidget spinner. 6 months later, you're going to be manufacturing couch parts at midnight. And you do not have to be an engineer to start. When I first started 3D printing 3 years ago, the technology was even more raw. And now, thanks to AI, some of the most difficult parts of 3D printing have been solved for you. The technology just keeps getting better and better, and the prints are getting faster and faster, and the technology is getting cheaper and cheaper. And the hardest part of 3D printing was making the models. And I say that knowing that even 3 years ago, you could still get online and download models, and you can still do it today. There are websites where there are probably millions and millions of free models. The child door lock that we had to put on the office, that model existed online, and I was able to print it, install it, totally free. The community is very much about free. It's all about open source. So if there is a part that you're looking for, it might exist on the internet, and somebody's probably giving it away for free. You want to print Halloween decorations, it's all out there. You can probably do it for free. But the thing that was the real challenge, where the real barrier to entry was, and this is something that is kind of shaking the industry, why AI is shaking industry to the core, because you had to have some level of knowledge of CAD. In other words, you had to be able to use engineering level software in order to make a model if you needed something custom. Now, to make something custom, you had to be able to open up that engineering software. You had to be able to deal with the measurements. You had to be able to work in 3D space, which it's one thing to work in 2D space, but when you're working in 3D space, it's a level of complication that for most people, and for me, was beyond my reach initially. I was able to take images of Buddhas that already existed, presidential busts that already existed, and it took me forever to figure out how to just like slice the head off the Buddha and put the president's head on top of the Buddha to make the presidential Buddhas. It was a big challenge for me initially just to do that. It's not a problem anymore, because now AI, the LLM tools, whether it's Claude or many of the others, those software tools can now make the model for you with a pretty damn good degree of certainty. It can now make the model, skipping the engineering process almost entirely. As a matter of fact, this little plastic flag that you can see, I think I've shown you guys before, this was made, it was developed using my logo, which I uploaded to Claude and said, make a beautiful 3-color printed flag for my microphone. And sure enough, the beautiful gold logo rendered, you can see here this nice white. It's not like painted on, it's printed on. It's a beautiful flag here for advertising my show. And this was completely made and developed through Claude. So really cool design. And I didn't have to be an engineer to start. So now the most challenging part of 3D printing, had the engineering part of it, has been solved. But like I said, there are online repositories. If there's a design that you're looking for to solve some problem, somebody else probably broke the same knob that you broke. They got annoyed enough to model it, and then they put the file online for the next guy. It's kind of a revolution. It's a beautiful little free market enterprise. Somebody solves a problem once, thousands of strangers are getting the benefit, right? Now, this other guy in the story, Chris Adcock, he did exactly that. The control knob on his expensive stand mixer broke. Well, he found a digital template that somebody else had created it. He downloaded it, printed it, stuck it on the mixer, and then he got the machine working again for pennies. So think about that, guys. The company no longer has a monopoly on the replacement part to the product that's sitting in your own kitchen. And if the file doesn't exist, like I say, you can just make it on your own. Grizz Cheese says he hasn't touched his 3D printer in a while. He got frustrated trying to figure out why some prints came out really well and others failed. I really need to start over. Well, that's really interesting. I would say, Grizz Cheese, that one of the things you might want to think about is that if you use AI, a large language model, you can ask it for your print settings. And now, because AI can actually take over your computer, you can. So one of the things I printed yesterday was, we get a lot of trash in our car. So I printed her yesterday a trash bucket that goes into your cup holders in your car. And so, but I wanted to experiment with making the 3D prints as smooth as possible, because a lot of times you'll see like thick layer lines. So it's pretty obvious that what you've manufactured is 3D printed because those layer lines stick out. But there's a tool in your software that can actually comb it as it's printing, but you have to know what the settings are, right? You have to kind of like tweak it and work all that. Again, you don't have to do that anymore. You can now give your software a prompt telling it exactly what it is that you want it to do. Make it set the printing to be as smooth as possible to hide layer lines, and it will actually take over your software, enter in all the settings, and then create a template for you that you can apply to future prints, so that rather than having to do a lot of sanding, which is what I would initially do whenever I would print something, because there are these thick layer lines. You have to sand it, you have to prime it, you have to paint it if you want it to be smooth. But every 3D printer setting has a setting for combing. You just have to do a little bit of testing, a little futzing with it. It used to be very complicated. It's not very complicated anymore, right? So the barrier between I wish somebody had made this and I made this is now getting ridiculously small. So there is a huge cultural change happening right now if you're willing to take advantage of it. And the machines are getting cheaper too. The article points to budget models from Bamboo Lab, Creality, and Elegoo in about the $200 range. Now you can spend more. There's a bamboo machine that runs around $800, though. That's the one sitting behind me. Luckily, thanks to all the money that we spend on our podcasting business, we had a whole bunch of points saved up, so I managed to get that, snag that for a really good deal. And as you can see, there are what's sitting on top of that printer is the upgrade that allows you to have multiple colors, multiple filaments, and you can daisy chain it with more if you really want to. So this can print up to 4 colors, really 5 because you can hang one on the side as well. But and you can see right. No, you can't see right there. You can see on that flag there that's how we were able to print this multicolored flag for the Wake Up America show. So you can get cheaper ones, and they'll typically have one filament color, but sometimes you can daisy chain. Even the cheaper ones, you can figure out a way to daisy chain multiple filaments, multiple plastic colors into one, and not spend a whole bunch of money on an upgraded one. Now, there's lots of good reasons to get an upgraded machine these days, but it's not industrial equipment money anymore. For the price of a decent power tool, you can have a miniature factory. And you don't even necessarily have to buy one. If you go to the Jefferson City Mall, the Capitol Mall, they actually have a little science center where if you want to go and experiment with 3D printing, I don't know if there may be like an hourly fee, kind of like a library, but you can go and experiment with 3D printers and test them out and see if you like them. So you don't necessarily have to spend a lot of money if you want to see if this is something you're good at, or just print one part one time and then walk away. Say there's something really annoying that you wanted to fix for a long time. You can give them your file and they'll even print it for you. So, people are using these printers at libraries and maker spaces. So you could walk into a public library sometimes with a digital file and then walk out with an object. I mean, Ben Franklin would have lost his mind over this. And that's one of the reasons why we love our Buddha Ben. So we don't have any right now. We sold out of those, but we're going to put them back on the store. So if you want to get a Buddha Ben or one of our 3D printed Buddhas over here at forlibertyshop.com, you can do so. Highly recommend that you do that. We also 3D print our killdozers. Quest Fanning says, 3D printer cafe. Quest says, can you laser scan items to reproduce them? You'd have to separate moving parts. You can laser scan them, but now there are apps where you can actually take a photograph of the item itself, and then the photograph will then upload into the software. And there's dozens of apps that will actually do that, and you don't need to do a laser scan. And now there's an upgraded version of the printer that I have right there. This is the Bamboo P2S. But there is, I believe it's a Bamboo H2X, and the Bamboo H2X comes with, instead of one nozzle spitting out plastic, it has 2 nozzles spitting out plastic. So one can print your print, and then the other can print those little supports, those little trees, like I was showing you right there, so that it goes a little bit faster. But that upgraded printer also does laser engraving as well, so you can do. You can engrave wood on it, and I think metal as well. So that's the upgraded version of the printer that I have right now. I wanted to start with this one, see if I could make a little bit of money with it. And if I make, once I feel like I've made enough money from printing items from this 3D printer, then I'm going to upgrade to the one, and we'll start doing maybe some laser engraving, wood etching. Maybe we'll be able to laser engrave our own little jewelry or things like that Stephanie might want to make. So Dan Miller from North Carolina printed banana hooks for under his cabinet. And he found out that the first version that he made could not handle the weight. So he had to adjust the design. And, so the machine, isn't going to make you smart, but it's going to give you a way to fail cheaply, then learn something, and then change the design and try again. So, and that's the way that people used to learn everything. And this guy that they interviewed for the piece, he did the same thing with plastic connectors on his washing machine suspension rods. He printed out one test piece first, then he made his adjustments, and then he printed the rest. That might sound small, but appliance repair is exactly where this gets interesting. A washing machine doesn't become useless just because one tiny plastic connector failed. It becomes useless because you cannot get the tiny plastic connector. The printer attacks that problem directly. Need to be able to hold your pens on your desk. Print a little 3D printed Hogwarts castle if you want. And then there's the customization piece. Sandy Ginther in Canada printed cutlery bins that fit the exact length of his spoons and knives. He printed an under sink towel organizer that fits his actual cabinet. So a store has to build for 1 million kitchens. You only have to build for your kitchen. So you've got an advantage that mass production can never completely beat. Matt Swanigan, he had an 8-year-old lab mix named Lenny who kept ramming through a set of French doors. So he designed his own lock for the doors. Now, it took 4 versions before he got it right, but now it can take the full force of Lenny. We had a similar problem here with our French Bulldogs slamming through our French doors, but I didn't have to use my 3D printer. I just zip tied them together. So sometimes you don't need to get too high tech to solve those problems. Good morning, Studio Terrible. Welcome to the show. We're talking about 3D printing right now. We're about to get to Canadian secession here in just a few minutes, so the product development department for manufacturing things in your own homes is just one guy now, a few prints, then the dog running out of door. You've got a problem. How do you fix it? 3D print it, right? And here's the thing: for decades, we've been trained to treat broken as synonymous with trash. You've broken a part. You either have to order it online, maybe not even get it 2 days later from Amazon. You used to have to wait sometimes weeks for something to come from China. Maybe a little hinge breaks or a knob breaks or a clip breaks, and then the entire product goes into the garbage, or a toy, right? Because the replacement is hard to find or it's stupidly expensive. But 3D printing now reintroduces an older American habit. Fix the thing, right? And if the original design stunk, fix that too, and maybe even sell it online. So not just because I love 3D printing, am I bringing this up, guys, but I just think it is a bigger story than just a bunch of guys playing with plastic in their garages. It's not just a nerd thing. This is decentralized manufacturing. This is individual ownership of the means to solve your own very small problems. You don't have to wait on customer service with hold music. You don't have to wait for a container ship from China. You don't have to pay $30 because some company knows it owns the only weird-shaped clip that fits your sofa. You have the file, you have the machine, you have the filament, get to work and just print it. Yeah. There you go. So if a $30 replacement part can be made at home for a few cents, how much of what we call the cost of things is actually the cost of the object? How much of the cost of what you're paying is the cost of distribution, branding, the shiny box it comes in, and being a captive customer. All right? Did Americans become a throwaway culture because products got worse, or maybe just because we lost the skills and tools that made repairing them worth the trouble? If you can download a file from a stranger, modify it for your house, and manufacture the object on your desk, are we watching a true revolution here? The decentralization of all manufacturing. Because some of these 3D printers do 3D print metal. I mean, what happens to the old business model of charging $30 for a proprietary piece of plastic when millions of customers eventually have a machine that can make it for 30 cents? If you've got an outdoor pool that's plastic part has sprung a leak, you can remanufacture that in your own home overnight. We spend a lot of time talking about technology that makes people more dependent, like algorithms and addiction, subscriptions to products, closed ecosystems. So a 3D printer, is this one of the rare modern technologies that can actually make individuals more self-reliant? I think so. I'd love to hear your thoughts. If the American garage can become a machine shop, a parts department, and a tiny factory for $200, what else are we still paying somebody else to do just because we've not realized we can do it for ourselves? It's like that thing that they made that could cut your hair. It's called the suck cut. You know what I'm talking about? The suck cut. Hold on, I've got that somewhere, don't I? The suck cut, exactly. The irony, this wing. Oh, that's what it's from. Hold on.
Okay, Garth.
Prepared to give a complete demonstration.
Okay, Garth. Just sit there and he's gonna put that thing on your melon, okay?
Just a trim, don't buzz me, all right?
So tell me, Ron, exactly how does the suck cut work?
Well, as you can see, it sucks as it cuts.
It certainly does suck.
It certainly does suck. Good morning, guys. Wake up, America. Live free or die. We're glad and thankful to have you here today. I hope that you're enjoying the show so far this morning. Click the like button if you haven't already. Click the follow button if today's the first time you've ever watched the Wake Up America show. Just an FYI, we do have our own 3D printed items for sale, and you can find them all at forlibertyshop.com. Every purchase that you make during the live show, hope you guys are smiling and laughing today. Every purchase that you make during the live show goes to help unlock the bonus content on the show. Austin, what is the bonus content? Well, the bonus content for all the newbies is a 5-minute mini documentary that we produce that you watch instead of commercials. And when we go to a commercial break, typically it's so that I can get a quick little drink of water, maybe go pee for Liberty, or get a guest on the show. And we do have 2 guests coming up on this show. So that means commercial breaks are coming. Womp womp. Well, you don't have to listen to commercial breaks if you download the audio podcast version and listen to us later. But if you're listening to us live and you want to participate with the community and you want to help support the For Liberty Network, then my recommendation, head over to forlibertyshop.com live right now. That's the number 4, libertyshop.com. Buy yourself some sweet 3D printed object, maybe a killdozer. Or if you're not into 3D plastic items, I get it. Grab yourself a box of delicious Founding Flavors coffee. Our Founding Flavors coffee is the best coffee in the world. Jeffersonian Java is the #1 best-selling product at forlibertyshop.com. So give it a try. If you don't like it, I'll give you your money back. Head to forlibertyshop.com. That's the number 4, libertyshop.com. Get yourself some sweet, sweet goods. When we come back, will the 51st state come from Canadian secession? We're going to talk about the secession of the state of Alberta, Canada, when we get back after the commercials, because we haven't unlocked the bonus content yet. This is the Wake Up America show on the For Liberty Network. 'Tis the year of our Lord, 1801. President Trump Jefferson casts his gaze o'er the sovereign Potomac and beholds a most wretched spectacle upon the waters. From the cursed shores of Tripoli and the welfare coffers of distant Minnesota comes the brazen Captain Ilhan Omar, commanding her fleet of Barbary pirates. She demands her ransom, billions in reparations. Yet one instrument of fortitude suffices, a steaming chalice of Jeffersonian Java, bold and unapologetic from For Liberty Shop. No more tribute to rogues, he thunders, and dispatches the Navy and Marines to smash Omar's fleet asunder. Trump Jefferson stands triumphant as Omar's plunder meets the end it deserved back in Minnesota. Jeffersonian Java, the coffee that gives true Americans the courage to refuse tribute and rebuke fraud. Procure yours at forlibertyshop.com and make America caffeinated again.
In a city where businesses never sleep, the technology still crashes. When technology turns criminal, they send up the signal. He's not a myth, and he's definitely not your nephew who knows computers. He installs, he protects, he backs it up, he keeps your business online and out of trouble. Managed IT, security, cloud, support that actually answers the phone. Layer 8 tech. When your network breaks, he wakes. Call Drew before your tech needs a rescue signal.
George Washington spent 8 years making sure nobody knew where he was. Troop movements, secret dispatches. The man was a ghost. So when a barista leaned out a window and asked for his exact location in exchange for points they called stars, he looked at his flag and said, "I've already got my stars. 13 of them. Keep your dignity and your location intact. Grab a box of Washington's Revolutionary Roast at forlibertyshop.com.
Hark! I've discovered a brew so bold, 'Twill ignite the spirit of liberty. This is not merely coffee, 'tis the very essence of American boldness. Give me coffee, or give me death. Go to For Liberty Shop to procure yours now.
Are you tired of the strange radioactive effects of leftist culture? Do you ever wonder what happened to good old-fashioned American values? Well, fear no more, because there's a new force fighting back against the cultural rot of today. Introducing Culturama, a right-of-center talk show that's taking back the future today. Hosted by none other than blonde bombshell herself, Daniela Pensack. She's not just talking, she's taking culture back. With sharp takes, brilliant guests, and a few surprises along the way. Tune in to the live video podcast twice a week, because the future doesn't have to be weird. It can be Culturama.
If there wasn't going to be somebody who was a fiery champion of liberty, somebody who would get out there and who would be aggressive, and if they wouldn't do it with more fire or passion than I had, then I would go and I would fight this battle for us. I've fought for the principles that we all share. Parties tend to be secondary to me. We're here because we believe in the principles of liberty. I am not a perfect messenger, but I think I'm a damn good one. This is a replica of our first president's flintlock pistol. You have my full support, my respect, and my gun.
I think that the heart of my philosophy is much more libertarianism than well, that's the fashionable word these days, I guess. A conservative is no longer just that. He's a libertarian, and always has been.
Yet any time you and I question the schemes of the do-gooders, we're denounced as being against their humanitarian goals. They say we're always against things, we're never for anything.
What is fascism? Fascism is private ownership, private enterprise, but total government control and regulation.
Well, the trouble with our liberal friends is not that they're ignorant. It's just that they know so much that isn't so. If we lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on earth. This is the issue of this election. Whether we believe in our capacity for self-government or whether we abandon the American Revolution and confess that a little intellectual elite in a far distant capital can plan our lives for us better than we can plan them ourselves.
The conservative, so-called, is the one that says less government. Get off my back, get out of my pocket, and let me have more control of my own destiny.
Canada, it's illegal to feed the wildlife because the animals become dependent on handouts. And then they forget how to survive. Sound familiar, Canada? Stop fighting each other. Start fighting for freedom this October. Vote yes for fairness. Vote yes for equality. Vote yes to cut off Canada's welfare. This October, vote yes to Alberta independence.
Damn, that's a good song. I want to put that one in my show. Good morning, rise and freedom. Yes to Alberta independence. Well, look at a map. Start at Montana, move your finger north. The first thing you hit is Alberta. It has 5.1 million people, 5 million head of cattle, the highest GDP per person of any Canadian province. And this state, almost called it a country, not yet. This state has, hold on. You guys aren't hearing my background music, I guess. Hold on. Stream Deck. There we go. Hold on. Let me try it again. There you go. Now you can hear the music and the sound effects. Sound good? It's cold there. Yes, it is cold. It has the highest GDP per person of any Canadian province and an energy industry that produces most of the oil that Canada sells to the world. And Alberta, it's cowboy country. They've got oil derricks, low taxes, and a long memory for every time Ottawa told it what it could do with its own resources. The Texas of the North, it's not a bad description. And this October 19th, those people are going to go to the polls, and they will be getting 10 referendum ballots. But the first one counted is the one that could rearrange the map. Thank you, JJ4884, says Drill Baby Drill, and Rebel News has been on the pulse regarding Canadian corruption. Hell yeah, they have. They're one of the best, probably the best Canadian outlet. Calgary Stampede is insane. Been twice, says Peter the Great. That sounds fun. So the first thing they're going to vote on is to ask the question of whether they should have a referendum, to study it, right? And so to begin the legal process towards a binding referendum on separation. Now, I know that there are people in Ottawa who are going to laugh this off. It's a couple of angry guys at a rodeo. Well, Elections Alberta just verified 222,597 signatures on a petition that asked directly whether Alberta should become an independent state. They needed 177,000. They cleared it by almost 45,000. Now, guys, I'm not going to make it out to be something that it's not. They are still the underdogs. A poll released on Friday has 61% wanting to stay and 33% wanting to start the process. But inside Danielle Smith's own United Conservative base, that number flips. 60% want to go forward. Now, let's talk about what this has to do with America. Alberta separatists have already sat down with U.S. State Department officials. Their spokesman is saying that they don't want to become the 51st state, but they have oil. So they say they want a free, independent Alberta. So, America is not going to get another state tomorrow, if my current calculations are correct. But there is now a date on the calendar. There is a verified independence movement. And there's a province on our northern border that's asking a question that Ottawa thought it would never have to answer. So what if Alberta doesn't need Canada as much as Canada needs Alberta? So let's talk about what the ballot is. Let's get the story straight before we distort the facts, because it is getting overstated online. October 19th is not, should Alberta leave Canada tomorrow? The official question will give voters two choices: remain a province, or have the government commence the legal process required under the Canadian Constitution to hold a binding separation referendum. And the October result itself is officially non-binding. So it's kind of the starting gun at the race, not the finish line. And if you look at the other 9 questions on the ballot, then they'll tell you what it's really about. More Alberta control over immigration, proof of citizenship to vote, abolish the unelected Canadian Senate, let provinces opt out of federal programs without losing their money, let provincial law take priority over Ottawa in areas of shared jurisdiction. Even if separation loses, the entire ballot reads like Alberta is sliding a note across the table that says, get out of our business. And the independence movement, they're doing a lot more than just trending on X. They have collected the signatures because the legal threshold was 177,000, and they got 286,000. And 279,000 were valid. And because they had the verification process that estimated that, a tiny percentage of them weren't valid. So that's about 7.5% of the entire electorate. So the election authority ruled that the petition met the statutory requirements and was successful. So that's more than a Twitter poll, guys. These are real people. They put their names on paper. But the legal wrinkle is this. The petition asked the question, should Alberta cease to be part of Canada to become an independent state? But a court quashed the original approval after a challenge involving First Nations consultation and treaty rights, the natives, right? So the decision is now under appeal, and Elections Alberta says the petition's next steps are frozen until the courts sort it out. So Ottawa has not beaten the movement at the ballot box so far. The real fight has been, can they even get the ballot box open? And you're going to see something floating around online about early 2027. Well, Danielle Smith was reported at July 30 UCP town hall saying that if the October option to move forward wins, she would target April or May 2027 for a binding referendum. So that's just a timetable, but it's not a guaranteed legal date that that's where the question will be. They've got courts, constitutional rules, treaty questions with the natives here and there, right? So spring 2027 for the referendum vote, I would pencil that in, not Sharpie it, because Canada actually has a break glass in case a province wants outlaw. After Quebec's separation fights, Parliament passed the Clarity Act. A province cannot just declare independence. The final question has to clearly ask whether the province should become an independent state, and then the House of Commons decide whether the result represents a clear majority. And they're not allowed to look at not just the margin, but turnout too. 50.1 does not automatically mean you're going to wake up the next morning with a new flag. And even after a clear yes, the Supreme Court says that the result creates an obligation to negotiate, not a magic eject button. So the Constitution would have to be amended, and those negotiations would involve Ottawa and the other provinces. There would be questions about their debt, federal assets, borders, minority rights, First Nations treaties, territorial claims. All of that has to be dealt with. So independence is not a legal process. Hell, we had to fight and kill for ours. We had to shoot the bastards. And it's the same foreign government. That feeling when you post about Alberta independence and the Americans show up to fight the liberals in the comments with you. Now, so the number that the separation side has to face head on, the freshest poll I can find was done August 10th through 13th and released August 14th, several days ago. 61% say Alberta should remain in Canada. 33% say start the legal process for the binding referendum. 5% are unsure. But if you ask the even simpler question, actually leave or stay, it's 65 to 30 for stay. So independence isn't winning today. But if you look at the poll a little bit more closely, it does get interesting because among people who voted for Danielle Smith's United Conservative Party in 2023, 60% want to commence the process and only 35% want to stop it. So the province as a whole is federalist, but the governing conservative base is not. That's how an issue with 33% support can dominate a government's entire agenda. And there is another detail buried in the poll that I think the government of Canada and Ottawa should listen to, because the people who say they would actually vote to leave, 59% say they really want an independent country. 41% say the bigger objective, though, is sending a message to Ottawa. So it's good news and it's bad news for Canada. It means that some of this vote is negotiating leverage, and it also means Ottawa has alienated enough people that they're willing to put the country itself on the poker table just to get their attention. So now, before we start drawing 51 stars on our flag, it's not an annexation movement. A June poll found 15% favored an independent Alberta, but only 6% wanted to join the United States. The separatists that were interviewed said the same thing. Their objective is a new country, not American statehood. But like we say, they do have oil, so. So never say never. So we can get into all the deals, all of the deals and all the questions, but it is on the October ballot. And for me, I say, because my heart loves freedom and the idea that people would have the right to self-reliance, and that Alberta, and we get to stick it to Canada, which hates us so much. I say yes, but they're not listening to me. It's up to them. Thank you so much for tuning into the Wake Up America show. I'm your host, Austin Petersen. Click the like button if you haven't already. Will we call them Albertians? Great question, Maria Edenbow. Thanks so much for Quest Fanning and Maria Edenbow and JJ4884, Peter the Great, and so many of Arvolt24 and so many of our other friends hanging out with us in the chat. We've got a great guest coming up next on the Wake Up America show, starting the second hour. 2 guests back to back. My next guest, Economist Phil Magness from the Independent Institute, joins us live to talk about the almighty dollar. Is it a bad thing that the United States has the reserve currency of the world? That's what JD Vance insinuates, although maybe I'm misconstruing him. We'll talk about that when we get back. It's the Wake Up America show on the 4 Liberty Network. Don't go away.
Are you tired of the strange radioactive effects of leftist culture? Do you ever wonder what happened to good old-fashioned American values? Well, fear no more, because there's a new force fighting back against the cultural rot of today. Introducing Culturama, a right-of-center talk show that's taking back the future today. Hosted by none other than blonde bombshell herself, Daniela Pensack. She's not just talking, she's taking culture back. With sharp takes, brilliant guests, and a few surprises along the way. Tune in to the live video podcast twice a week, because the future doesn't have to be weird. It can be Culturama.
If there wasn't going to be somebody who was a fiery champion of liberty, somebody who would get out there and who would be aggressive, and if they wouldn't do it with more fire or passion than I had, then I would go and I would fight this battle for us. I've fought for the principles that we all share. Parties tend to be secondary to me. We're here because we believe in the principles of liberty. I am not a perfect messenger, but I think I'm a damn good one. This is a replica of our first president's flintlock pistol. You have my full support, my respect, and my gun.
I think that the heart of my philosophy is much more libertarianism than well, that's the fashionable word these days, I guess. A conservative is no longer just that. He's a libertarian and always has been.
Yet any time you and I question the schemes of the do-gooders, we're denounced as being against their humanitarian goals. They say we're always against things, we're never for anything.
What is fascism? Fascism is private ownership, private enterprise, but total government control and regulation.
Well, the trouble with our liberal friends is not that they're ignorant. It's just that they know so much that isn't so. If we lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on earth. This is the issue of this election. Whether we believe in our capacity for self-government or whether we abandon the American Revolution and confess that a little intellectual elite in a far distant capital can plan our lives for us better than we can plan them ourselves.
Conservative, so-called, is the one that says less government, get off my back.
I am not sure that I think the reserve currency is actually good for the United States of America. I think there is a good argument that reserve currency status is akin to coal in Appalachia. It's a resource curse, right? It allows your consumers to consume very cheaply, right? That's been the story of the American economy for the last 15 or so years. Even before that, is we can just borrow basically in an unlimited way because we have the reserve currency. So that's a massive subsidy to incurring debt. The debt is cheaper, even in raised interest rate environments. This is one of the crazy things about what's going on right now is the market is in some ways pricing future interest rates lower than what the Fed is right now. That's kind of weird. So we have this massive subsidy to cheap debt for the American consumer. Well, that's good, right? Consuming is important, especially food, medicine, things like that. But I think it's a massive tax on American producers.
Good morning, Rise and Freedom. I'm Austin Petersen. You're watching and listening to the Wake Up America show. My next guest started one of the biggest economic arguments on X this weekend, the nerdiest debates ever this weekend, by dusting off JD Vance's own words about the U.S. dollar and asking whether the vice president's industrial policy is quietly putting the world's reserve currency at risk. Phil Magness, Dr. Phil, is an economic historian. He's a senior fellow and the David J. Theroux Chair in Political Economy at the Independent Institute. And his thread argues that Vance's dollar skepticism is part of a larger protectionist project built around tariffs, manufacturing, and a weaker dollar. Phil, welcome to the Wake Up America show. Good to see you, sir.
Happy to be here.
Yeah, Phil, before we turn this into econ Twitter, explain it like we're sitting at the breakfast table. When people say the dollar is the world's reserve currency, what does that mean for the guy watching us in Missouri?
Yeah, so the dollar is basically the central feature of the international exchange and trading system. It is far and away the currency that is accepted in most places around the world. It is the mechanism that greases the wheels of trade. And a lot of this comes from the reputation that the dollar has. The United States is seen as a very stable, politically stable entity. It's seen as a reasonably good manager of monetary policy. Yes, we do have bouts of inflation, but that was a worldwide phenomenon. But by and large, the United States has a decent track record of a stable currency. And we also don't have impediments to basic institutions like the rule of law. So, for example, China imposes very strict capital controls over the flow of currency across its borders, and that's an impediment for China being adopted as a reserve currency for the world. But the United States is recognized as something that reverts to the rule of law, reverts to stability as a basis for its currency system, and therefore it's appealing abroad for other countries to adopt in exchange in dollars.
Now, let's give me your best case against Vance here, because he has said reserve currency status can be a massive subsidy to American consumers, but it's a massive tax on American producers. Is he right about that?
Well, that's the interesting thing. So Vance is a hardcore protectionist. He likes tariffs. He thinks tariffs are the solution to all of America's problems, and has been harping for years on the trade deficit being a major issue. I'm a free trader. I work in trade economics. The trade deficit itself is just a misreading of the accounting statistics of what crosses the border. But what JD Vance does, he subscribes to something that's called the dual deficits theory. And this is the claim that you have simultaneous deficits in goods and services, the trade deficit, and then the budget deficit at the same time. And this comes from a misreading of the basic accounting formulas behind GDP. If you rearrange a couple of the terms, you can get to a relationship between the trade deficit and then taxation and government spending. And Vance is reading that in such a way, it's like, oh, well, we can operationalize this. We can use it for policy. And his argument here basically comes down to a misinterpretation of economic data and economic statistics to assert that the fact that we have a trade deficit is proof that the dollar's reserve currency position is imposing something on the producer side in the United States. And then he pairs this with a philosophical concept that he's drawn to called post-liberalism. And you may have heard some of these characters like Patrick Deneen and Adrian Vermeule that are the intellectual mentors of Vance.
Yeah, we're going to get there. We're going to get there. But
Okay.
I just want well, don't front load it too much here. Just I want to stick to the question of, is the fact that the United States holds a reserve currency, is it a tax on American producers? Does it put American producers at a disadvantage when trying to export their products?
Yeah, not in the way that Vance claims. He vastly overstates the case. Now, the fact that we have a trade deficit, the fact that we are an importing country, it does mean dollars are flowing abroad. But those dollars that are being held abroad, I mean, it's not like people are stuffing them under their mattresses in other countries. They're flowing abroad because the dollar is accepted and realized as a good, solid, viable currency mechanism. There are reasons why foreign governments have holdings in U.S. Treasury, and it's not because they're like doing favors to the United States. They're viewed as very stable assets. They're viewed as something that is reliable to hold in the long term. And Vance is really kind of missing that part of the equation.
Okay, well, I appreciate that level of steel manning the other side, because for people like myself, I want to try and give everyone the benefit of the doubt, and it does feel on this topic that the complexity of it means that we're talking past one another, and sometimes I feel like we're shooting friends, over misunderstandings rather than getting to the heart of the matter and really debating these, because while I do think that you're right, that it is connected to this post-liberal project, I want to make sure that, if we're going to make a critique of our opponents, that we're doing so with the utmost of respect and in doing so in a way that is actually intellectually sound. So here's the thing. Stephen Myron's paper describes reserve demand as pushing the dollar above the level that would balance trade, and he says that the core trade-off is export competitive versus financial power. So what part of that do you actually reject? The mechanism, the size of the effect, or Vance's conclusion about what government should do about it?
Well, I think in the Myron paper, and this is the famous Mar-a-Lago Accord paper, it's sometimes referred to. This was Trump's former chair of the Council of Economic Advisors, put this out right before he took office for the second term. And it was basically an argument that we need to rebalance the entire international trade system. It was a sophisticated dress up of the case for trade protectionism and tariffs. And the issue with Myron's paper is he mistakes some very basic fundamentals of how trade policy works. One of the cores of that is that, when we put tariffs on goods coming in from abroad, the question is who pays for those tariffs? And Myron subscribes to an extremely heterodox theory that thinks we can shift the tax burden of who pays for the tariffs onto the foreign countries. Now, you can ask like 99 out of 100 economists, they're going to say, this is crazy, this is wrong. The empirical evidence says quite the opposite. The effect of tariffs gets burdened on the domestic economy. Consumers pay it. Importers pass their costs from the tariffs onto their customer base. And we're seeing that right now in the IEEPA tariffs that got struck down by the Supreme Court. What's the U.S. government having to do is refund all this money. It's not going to foreign countries that we put tariffs on. That money is going to U.S. import firms and U.S. companies that actually bear the burden of it. So Myron's made a fundamental mistake here, but in so doing, he's trying to dress up a more sophisticated argument for tariffs, because there's a problem. When you impose tariffs on goods from abroad, you diminish trade. When you diminish trade, that means fewer dollars are flowing abroad. What does that do? It strengthens the position of the currency. So it moves in the exact opposite direction of what JD Vance claims is the problem, or Myron himself claims is the problem, that the dollar is too strong abroad, and yet you impose tariffs, it makes the dollar even stronger, everything else held equal. So what do they have to do on that? Well, Myron proposed a countervailing policy of using the United States as leverage to weaken the dollar through all sorts of other mechanisms, including international arrangements, maybe even putting threats on foreign countries to rebalance their currency vis-a-vis the dollar. And then you start getting some of the more vulgarized versions of this, which is JD Vance saying, well, maybe we don't even need to be the reserve currency anymore. That can be the mechanism to rebalance the dollar and offset these effects of all the tariffs that they want.
Some people say that would result in hyperinflation like Weimar Germany if we did something like that. But let's put a pin in that for a moment, because one of the questions that I think that this is where I think critics have a fair question for you. Are you able to distinguish between saying reserve currency status has downsides and saying I want to abolish reserve currency status? Because those are different propositions, right? It's like, to use the analogy that one of my followers gave, saying we'd probably be better off if we never got that damn dog. It does not mean that dad is about to shoot. It does not mean dad's about to shoot the dog, right?
Right, right. Well, I think there's a fair analogy here. You look at the history of how the United States dollar evolved in the 20th century, going all the way back to the Bretton Woods system and the currency pegs. And then we initially had a gold exchange and we moved to a fiat system in the 1970s, like a pure fiat system. And I can look back at that and say, yes, that has some severe problems with it. I'm not saying that our monetary system is perfect. Yet at the same time, if you push so far in this direction, it's like, well, we recognize the problems with fiat currency, therefore we should abandon the dollar's position as a global reserve. It's like, it's like there's a fire, let's solve it by dumping gasoline over the entire town. So that's kind of the position we're in. Now, if you look at something like Vance, well, the question is, well, what is he doing? Is he just asking questions? Is he just saying, well, maybe there are downsides to the reserve currency? That's what his defenders want to cast this as. But if you listen to his speeches, listen to his interviews that he's given on this, it's like he only makes the downside argument on the reserve currency status, and then he couches it in all these ideas. It's like, well, there are specific policies that we could pursue. If we abandon this, the United States would be in a better position to manufacture industrial products such as weapons that we can export to the rest of the world. He actually says this in an interview. In another interview, he goes rambling on. He says, well, I don't think that the dollar's reserve currency position is a good thing. I think it's a resource curse. And Vance announces to the world that he believes in a very heterodox, which means outside of the mainstream, really fringe economic theory that holds that the reserve currency position's on net a bad thing for the United States. Some of his supporters are going to try and soft pedal that like he's just asking questions, but those questions all lead in the same direction and end up at a very radical proposal, which is, maybe we should abandon the reserve currency position.
Now, you made a point in your thread that I think deserves a little more attention. Tariffs can actually push the dollar up.
Absolutely.
Which seems pretty awkward if Vance's secret master plan is a weaker dollar. But Myron anticipates that exact problem. His paper said tariffs are dollar positive and would likely come first as leverage with any currency negotiation coming later. So is that really a contradiction in the Vance theory, or is it just simply a sequencing strategy that you think is too dangerous to pull off?
Well, I think it's a little bit of both. The contradiction comes about because there are some deep underlying assumptions that Myron has in his paper that just don't hold up against the economic literature. We can set those aside, though, and ask for the practical aspect of it. So if you're going to execute this type of multi-step currency devaluation and tariff strategy, it requires extreme precision. So, I'm not even going to grant him the argument that the economics is right, but let's suppose as a hypothetical for a moment that he had this figured out and you had these dual strategies you could execute. Enact tariffs to reduce importation, and then at the same time use international leverage to rebalance the dollar vis-a-vis other currencies in a downward direction. Well, what type of precision would that require to execute from the White House? You'd have to know the exact tariff rates you need to impose, when and where to impose them on every other country in the world. You'd have to do it seamlessly and a stable strategy of that. And then simultaneously, you have to turn around and take it to the negotiating table, these requests for foreign countries to rebalance their currencies against the dollar in the direction that Myron and Vance and some of these other proponents of this want. This is the type of seamless execution. I always ask the question when people propose something in the political realm, how would this be carried out, not by the politicians that we wish we had in the ideal world, but by the actual politicians and bureaucrats that we do have?
Yeah, that's
politicians that are corrupt, that are susceptible to interest, that are incompetent, that are changing their tariff rate every 5 minutes because the president tweets something out on Truth Social.
I think, no, you're right in theory, but in practice, what happens is that the politicians are always going to have some incentive to quote unquote do something. But
exactly.
let's talk about what this would mean. That, if the dollar lost a meaningful chunk of its global role tomorrow, what happens to Austin Petersen's mortgage? What happens to my credit card? What happens to my grocery bill? What happens to my taxes?
Well, and that's where things get really scary because, hey, the very first thing that happens, the United States no longer is able to basically have the rest of the world invest in its currency, invest in treasuries. And what does that do? It alters has all sorts of altering repercussions throughout the domestic U.S. economy. One of those is it would probably drive interest rates on your mortgage, on your credit card, on everything that you are borrowing through the roof. So, you know, you want to talk about making things more expensive at a time of many people say this is a crisis in affordability that's going on right now.
Now, Phil,
a great way to exacerbate that.
It is. Phil, the Vance camp issued a statement. I say Vance camp, but this is just, you know, basically his kind of Praetorian Guard out there, or Vance Guard as they call themselves.
The Vance Guard, right?
Who write in the socialist magazine Jacobin, strangely enough, quoted Ron Paul. And they said, in the short run, the issuer of a fiat reserve currency can accrue great economic benefits. In the long run, it poses a threat to the country issuing the world currency. In this case, it's the United States. As long as our foreign countries take our dollars in return for real goods, we come out ahead. This is a benefit many in Congress fail to recognize as they bash China for maintaining a positive trade balance with us. But this leads to a loss of manufacturing jobs to overseas markets as we become dependent on others and less self-sufficient. We saw how dangerous that was during COVID, Phil. That's my own editorial. Back to Ron Paul. Foreign countries accumulate our dollars due to their high savings rates and graciously loan them back to us at low interest rates to finance our excessive consumption, close quote, Ron Paul. How would you respond to this?
Well, Paul is making a much broader critique of the fiat currency system, and this has been one of his staples for his entire political career. You know, Ron Paul is a gold standard guy. So he's making an abstract argument that, yes, the fiat currency system is susceptible to international manipulations. Let's set that aside, though, and ask the question, what's Ron Paul's objective here? Is it to create a protectionist, autarkic wall around America that brings back industries that have gone by the wayside? Well, if you want the answer to that question, I would encourage anyone to Google what Ron Paul has said about the Trump-Vance tariff agenda. He's likened it to socialism. He has lambasted the president for putting protectionism in place. So the people on the Vance camp that are trying to enlist Ron Paul, of all people, to this cause of defending JD Vance's currency position are completely omitting the fact that Ron Paul is on the exact opposite end of the political spectrum from Vance and Trump on the tariff issue, which is the real reason why Vance is going after the currency.
Now, so one of our listeners wrote in, JT Beckhofer says, does global demand for the dollar really hurt American workers and manufacturers, or is dollar dominance one of the foundations of American economic and geopolitical power?
Well, I tend toward the latter as a practical reality. You know, any action that would be taken to remove ourselves from this position of the dollar would have so many adverse economic repercussions geopolitically, economically, in the domestic economy. You know, we already talked a little bit about what it would do to interest rates and borrowing from abroad. It could trigger an inflationary episode. So, you know, going down that route, a lot of bad things happen that I don't think anyone in the Vance camp is really willing or interested in talking about. So I think just as a practical reality, the position that we're in right now, even though, yeah, it's not a perfect system, fiat currencies are not the perfect system by any means, but you ask the question, well, what's the alternative? Almost every other country in the world uses a fiat standard of some sort right now, and those that don't tend to be very small economies with idiosyncrasies around them. It's not like there's an obvious replacement that could step in and take King Dollar's place.
Phil, I've got my Elon Musk bucks here, the X card. X Money is currently supplying 6%, as JJ in the chat says, supplying 6% savings rate. So can an entity ignore the Federal Reserve interest rates and benefit savers?
Well, that's the interesting thing is you have on an international exchange, and this is one of the areas where I think there is some benefit to freely floating exchanges, is it introduces competition into the currency space. And, you know, one of the interesting things here from history that we know about, when central banks face absolutely no competition, that's when they're at their worst. That's when the political incentives align to, you know, engage in debt financing that leads to inflation. One of the areas of the cryptocurrency world that emerged was to be kind of a private counter to that was outside of the control of a central bank, whether it's the Federal Reserve or any other central bank. And I think we're kind of in a period of flux right now because people are still trying to figure out, well, what does cryptocurrency do? What's the role that it plays in the monetary system? You know, it was set up to be an alternative medium of exchange, yet it's also become something of an asset that has, holding onto Bitcoin or whatever cryptocurrency you happen to have for the long term because it appreciates in value. It could be something of an investment. We're still kind of in that flux period of figuring out exactly what it is, but it has introduced some competition, I think, in a healthy way to central banks around the world.
Now, last question for you. What keeps Phil Magness up at night more? Vance questioning the trade-offs of reserve status, or the debt, deficits, inflation, and bad governance that could make foreigners stop wanting our money without anybody in Washington attending it?
Right. Well, that's the thing. I'm an econ nerd. So when I see commentaries in the public space that are ostensibly framed as like solving a problem, but they've completely misdiagnosed the problem, which is, I think, what Vance has done here. He's recognized that, so internationally, the fiat currency regime that exists worldwide and the dollar's reserve position, it's not perfect, but he's seizing on those imperfections to smuggle in a protectionist trade agenda through the back door, as if this is supposedly the solution to far more minor diagnoses of problems that he's made. Let's create an even bigger problem by going in a full autarkic protectionist direction. So I start seeing things like that, and it's the misdiagnosis that really irks me. It's the misrepresentation of the core of the problem. And, if one of your listeners says, hey, fiat currencies have issues internationally, the dollar's position, it's imperfect, I might be inclined to agree with some aspects of those arguments. But the real issue at the end of the day in the United States is our spending problem. It's our national debt. It's our the fact that our Congress regularly allocates much more money through government spending than it brings in taxes, and this has accrued to $40 trillion over the past 3/4 of a century. Basically, from the New Deal era to the present, we've been in a cycle of successive deficit spending. And yes, it's absolutely accrued, but no one really wants to address that problem. No one's willing to cut spending. So instead, you start getting like these gimmick solutions, of JD Vance or someone saying, well, if we ended the dollar's reserve currency status, that would fix the spending problem. And I'm like, no, that's not exactly the relationship that you are proposing here is not economically sound, and it really kind of sidesteps the core of the issue that these politicians don't even want to address, because cutting spending is hard. Cutting spending could be politically unpopular for them.
Phil Magness of the Independent Institute, bringing up the biggest, nerdiest econ fight on the internet. How many millions of views did that video that you posted get, Phil?
Well, it was wild. Because I posted it as a clip. I was like, hey, this is a really strange thing he's arguing here. And, you think maybe you have 10,000 viewers. 10 million so far.
Are you monetized on X, Phil?
I am.
your next paycheck, you're gonna have a trade. You're gonna have a trade deficit with Elon Musk.
Elon Musk. I mean, my monetization is going to jump from like $50 every couple of weeks or whatever it is to who knows.
You're going to get like $5,000 out of that one. So don't just whatever you do, don't use it for overconsumption, Phil. We appreciate you very much. Thank you very much for your time today. We appreciate you bringing up these topics, and we'll hopefully have you back on again soon.
Sounds great. Thanks.
Thank you very much. All right. When we come back, I want you to hear from somebody who actually changed his mind. I know, God, this never happens anymore, except for me. Sam Brown spent years on the anti-Israel side of the libertarian world. Then Charlie Kirk was murdered. The conspiracy machine fired up. Sam started asking whether the people that he had trusted on the Israel question had been telling the truth at all. So he went to Israel himself and came home a Zionist. That conversation is next. Ooh. We went from spicy econ nerd to spicy foreign policy nerd. Guys, grab your founding flavors at forlibertyshop.com. Stay right here. We'll be right back. This is the Wake Up America show, and you're watching the For Liberty Network.
you tired of the strange radioactive effects of leftist culture? Do you ever wonder what happened to good old-fashioned American values? Well, fear no more, because there's a new force fighting back against the cultural rot of today. Introducing Culturama, a right-of-center talk show that's taking back the future today. Hosted by none other than blonde bombshell herself, Daniela Pensack. She's not just talking, she's taking culture back. With sharp takes, brilliant guests, and a few surprises along the way. Tune in to the live video podcast twice a week, because the future doesn't have to be weird. It can be Culturama.
If there wasn't going to be somebody who was a fiery champion of liberty, somebody who would get out there and who would be aggressive, and if they wouldn't do it with more fire or passion than I had, then I would go and I would fight this battle for us. I've fought for the principles that we all share. Parties tend to be secondary to me. We're here because we believe in the principles of liberty. I am not a perfect messenger, but I think I'm a damn good one. This is a replica of our first president's flintlock pistol. You have my full support, my respect, and my gun.
I think that the heart of my philosophy is much more libertarianism than well, that's the fashionable word these days, I guess. A conservative is no longer just that. He's a libertarian and always has been.
Yet any time you and I question the schemes of the do-gooders, we're denounced as being against their humanitarian goals. They say we're always against things, we're never for anything.
What is fascism? Fascism is private ownership, private enterprise, but total government control and regulation.
Well, the trouble with our liberal friends is not that they're ignorant. It's just that they know so much that isn't so. If we lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on earth. This is the issue of this election. Whether we believe in our capacity for self-government or whether we abandon the American Revolution and confess that a little intellectual elite in a far distant capital can plan our lives for us better than we can plan them ourselves.
The conservative, so-called, is the one that says less government, get off my back, get out of my pocket, and let me have more control of my own destiny.
The left in America tells us not to have kids to save the planet, but in Cuba, they stopped having kids because the state destroyed the earth.
Collectivism doesn't create justice. It creates shortages, corruption, and power for the few. I've not just seen it, I've lived it. My family escaped it. Now the same failed ideas are being sold to a new generation. I'm here to expose the lie and defend liberty. From Cuba to Argentina to the United States.
Why do you support Israel? I support Israel because the worst people in the world all hate Israel. Think about the worst people in the world. Neo-Nazis, communists, Islamists, the worst people in the world. One of the only things these groups have in common is that they hate Jewish people and they hate the state of Israel. And I only became pro-Israel relatively recently. It was in the aftermath of Charlie Kirk's assassination. And before he was assassinated, I was actually quite anti-Israel. But I saw so many stupid people, quite frankly, saying, oh, it was the Mossad that did it, yada, yada, yada. And I knew for a fact that this made no sense whatsoever, that he had been a strong supporter of Israel throughout his life, and that these conspiracy theories were completely bunk. And so I was thinking, if these people are lying to me about the Kirk assassination, they have to be lying to me about some other stuff. And so I actually did my research. I ended up visiting Israel in January, and I had an excellent time, and now I would consider myself a Zionist.
Oh, man. Well, he's no longer a real libertarian in some corners of the internet by the biggest, most highest IQ anti-Semites ever. My next guest gave one of the bluntest answers I've ever heard to a question that's tearing apart parts of the right now. He asked why he would support Israel. Sam Brown says, I support Israel because the worst people in the world all hate Israel. Honestly, 200 IQ. But I think, what made that clip interesting and made me want to invite him on the show was, he said he used to be an anti-Israel libertarian. After Charlie Kirk's assassination, he watches people blame Mossad. And he did his own research. He actually traveled to Israel in January, and he now calls himself a Zionist, which is like, now it's like edgy. So joining us live here on the Wake Up America show is that young man joining us, Sam. Good morning. Welcome to the Wake Up America show. How are you, sir?
I'm doing great. Thanks for letting me on the show.
Glad to have you here, Sam. So you said, I support Israel because the worst people in the world all hate Israel. You name neo-Nazis, communists, and Islamists. That's a great line, but I want the argument beneath it. So what did you mean? Why did seeing those very different movements converge on hatred of Israel make you stop and think?
Well, it's like, I just look at these groups are very different on almost every issue of importance, and yet they manage to come together to hate this one very small country in the Middle East that's the size of New Jersey. I'm just thinking, okay, wait, if all these people that believe in all these things that I'm completely opposed to, if they're all saying that Israel is the worst country in the world, they're committing a genocide, blah, 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 then I should be skeptical of that claim if it's being brought up by people that have such horrific takes on every other major topic.
So, you've described yourself as an anti-Israel libertarian for a long time. I've been in the libertarian movement 20 years. I know these people. Take me back to that version of Sam Brown. What did you used to believe about Israel? What were the arguments that had convinced you?
Well, I didn't believe in all of the anti-Israel conspiracies, but I did believe in a couple. The biggest one would be that for a long time, I thought that the USS Liberty incident was deliberate. I also thought that Israel was heavily involved in us invading Iraq. In reality, that wasn't really the case. Prime Minister Ariel Sharon instead wanted us to focus on Iran. But yeah, those were the two big things, two big anti-Israel conspiracies that I believed in before Kirk got assassinated, before I started to reconsider my worldview.
Now, how did you initially arrive at some of those conclusions? Do you think that was it just like maybe a group psychosis? Were you like part of some libertarian groups or another? Like what was your initial like break into the libertarian movement that sort of started your political, worldview and philosophy?
Well, I remember one of the main reasons why I got involved, got interested in libertarianism to begin with. It was people like John Stossel, people like Freedom Tunes. I would watch videos from them on YouTube when I was in like middle school, and so for a while I considered myself like a Gary Johnson style libertarian. And then seeing everything that happened in 2020, I became much more of a Ron Paul style libertarian. And that was the case for quite a while, right? On my 19th birthday, I went to the Ron Paul Institute event in Herndon because I live in Northern Virginia, and I got to meet him. I also got to meet John Mearsheimer, who is no friend of Israel, no supporter of Israel whatsoever. Also a big supporter of socialism. That's kind of strange. He was at a Ron Paul event. But, I actually got my photo taken with Mearsheimer, which is something I've come to regret. But, I think about how much I've changed since then. And I think one of the main reasons why I had that worldview to begin with, I think peer pressure had a lot to do with it. It's like all my friends in all these groups like Young Americans for Liberty, the vast majority of them were very anti-Israel. So I just didn't really go against the grain. I just kind of went with what everyone else was doing. I wasn't really thinking for myself. And I wasn't really doing a lot of actual research on the subject. I was just kind of like going along with whatever my friends were saying, and it was really stupid of me, and I'm glad that's not the case anymore.
Well, kids do that, Sam. Listen, when I first got into the libertarian movement through Ron Paul in 2008, I was very familiar with it. There's a lot of group think, ironically, within the libertarian movement. There's a lot of pressure to support these ideals. And like you, I started to feel quite uncomfortable with the fact that I was going to these libertarian rallies and they would have these socialists speaking at these events. And I was just like, it's so bizarre. Why are we making allies out of people who literally want us dead and who hate everything that we stand for? But they place the war policy, the question of war, as like the highest and most important policy, largely because of the association with Murray Rothbard. But then they try and basically push out anybody to the right of Ron Paul on war or issues of like Russia or Israel or things like that. And a lot of this, harkens back to like the anarcho-capitalist movement, which is very strongly, anti-Israel. And there are criticisms of Israel, Sam, that you'll find that like any right-wing or conservative or true libertarian might agree with. Their economy is largely even more socialist than the United States. And the kibbutz policy, the kibbutz lifestyles, they choose to live that kind of lifestyle. But I certainly wouldn't want to bring that kind of lifestyle to the United States because it's opposed to our individualistic theories. But in the question of what it is that the United States and too many libertarians have fallen for leftist propaganda when it comes to foreign policy. Now, when your turnabout was the Charlie Kirk assassination. So talk to me, Sam, about what the assassination of Charlie Kirk did to sort of like wake you up, I guess you might say, take another red pill, if you will, and start a new philosophical journey.
Well, I remember where I was when I first heard about him getting shot. I was at the library at my university. I was studying I was doing my French homework, and all of a sudden I see this video of a man getting murdered, a man that I had been following for quite a long time, and it was completely horrifying. It was one of the most traumatic things to have ever happened to me. I know for the next couple of days I could barely eat, I could barely sleep. Like I almost went insane because of it. It was a really horrible event, and I saw so many people that I knew personally saying that Israel, of all people, was behind it. I was like, this is ridiculous. This makes literally no sense at all. Like, we have Tyler Robinson's fingerprints on the rifle. We have security camera footage of him being there, right? You all saw the debate between Candace Owens and Andrew Wilson. Wilson cooked her. Okay, like Candace Owens couldn't come up with any substantial proof for any of her claims. And it's like, when Wilson was bringing up her alleging Israeli involvement in the Kirk assassination, she was just like, well, I'm allowed to think. Okay, but you're generally not allowed to say things that are like insanely untrue, like especially when you're doing it with the goal of getting people to not like Jewish people, right? That's generally something that's frowned upon. And, I started reassessing my foreign policy views, and I ended up going to Israel with a group on campus. I go to George Mason University. I ended up going to Israel with a group there, and I was there for about 2 weeks, and I had an excellent time. It's one of the best foreign countries I've ever been to.
Well, talk to us about that, because the positive aspects of Israel, it's one thing to notice that all of the worst and most retarded people online all hate Israel. That in itself, I think, is a good enough reason to wonder if, well, maybe Israel actually is doing something right if those people are against it. But talk to us about when you say you're a Zionist. I mean, there's a big leap between saying something like, well, all the retards hate Israel, so I might as well support him, and saying, oh, I'm a Zionist now. So what were the positive benefits, or what do you think are the positive arguments in favor of Israel, not just a neutral stance, but a positive stance?
I think Israel is an aspirational model for almost every Western country in a lot of different ways. There's a lot of good things about Israel that I think other Western countries should replicate. And I'm not talking about like the fact that they have a more regulated economy than us, obviously. I'm talking about the fact they have an above replacement birth rate. They have an immigration system which only lets in people that are culturally compatible with the country, right? They teach their children to be patriotic citizens, to not hate their own culture. These are all things that America should emulate. These are not things that we should strive to be different from. Like, we should be more like Israel and a lot less like the Palestinians. You look at Palestinian politics, the two main parties in Palestinian politics are Fatah, which is a socialist party, which, by the way, supports terrorism. They're not as pro-terrorism as Hamas, but they do support terrorism. That's a different subject. And then you have Hamas, which is an insanely violent Islamist terrorist group, right? Like, you know, it's one thing to simply be like, oh, well, you know, I don't want to be involved in the Middle East, yada, yada. But to be openly in favor of groups like Fatah and Hamas is extremely unlibertarian. These are like the least libertarian groups in the entire world. It makes no sense for us to be supporting them, especially as Westerners.
Now, Sam, I know you're a young guy, and some of these questions are really tough. So I just kind of want to see how you handle them. How do you feel about AIPAC? I mean, a lot of right-wing Republicans, not all of them Israel haters, are deeply concerned about the level of influence that the American-Israeli Public Affairs Committee has here. Even Barry Goldwater, who I'm a huge fan of, who was not a Jew hater, he was half Jewish himself, says that he thought that lobby had too much influence in Washington, D.C. Are you open to those arguments?
I think it's fine to criticize the Israel lobby, but what you need to take into account is that the Israel lobby is not the biggest foreign lobby in America, right? It's barely in the top 10. You look at countries that contribute more to foreign lobbying. It's places like China, Saudi Arabia, where most of the 9/11 hijackers came from, Qatar, where Hamas's leadership is hiding out. These are all countries that really do not like us in any way, shape, or form, and they're contributing much more to lobbying than the Israel lobby does. And when you look at all lobbying in the grand scheme of things, like, I don't even think it's in the top 100. I'm pretty sure. Like, you have groups like the National Association of Realtors, the Corn Lobby. They do a lot to make sure that there's high fructose corn syrup in everything we consume. That's much more harmful than anything the Israel lobby has pushed for.
Well, but the Jews are the ones who put the high fructose corn syrup. Sam, you're missing out on that.
There's not a lot of Jewish corn farmers in rural Iowa. Last time I checked, that wasn't the case.
Wait, I'm sure we can find one. So now there's a difference between supporting Israel, Sam, and saying that the American taxpayer should write an unlimited check to any foreign government. Under the current U.S.-Israel security agreement, the U.S. provides about $3 billion a year in foreign military financing, plus $500 million for missile defense cooperation. You came to this as a libertarian. Can you say that Israel has a right to exist? They're a valuable ally, and they're being treated unfairly, but still ask hard questions about that foreign aid?
I think it's fine to have criticisms of foreign aid to any country, including Israel. And what you look at right now, like, most people on the Israeli right want to see American military aid to Israel cut off. Like, they want to see it, they want to transition out of military aid from the United States because they don't want any foreign government interfering in their military, right? Like, Netanyahu's been talking about this since the 1990s. You go up to the average Israeli right-winger, they're going to tell you, oh, yeah, no, Israel's a puppet of the United States, and that's very funny to most right-wingers in America, but that's how they feel. They want to have a sovereign military, and I think that's great.
Okay,
they want to transition away from foreign aid, and I think that's a good thing.
Okay, all right. So supporting Israel doesn't have to mean pretending the Israeli government is incapable of making a bad decision. So where do you draw the line between legitimate criticism of Netanyahu or the IDF, settlement policy with the settlers, right, or a particular war, and the kind of anti-Israel obsession that starts turning every news event into Mossad, Jewish money, or secret control? How do you delineate between those things?
I would say you need to focus on things that are actually real and things that can be proven with hard evidence and not just circumstantial evidence. So it's like the whole Gaza genocide myth, right? Like, more than 90% of the people that were alive in Gaza on October 6, 2023 are still alive, right? They killed only a very small fraction of Gazan society died as a result. And it was a war that was started by the Gazans. It was a war that was started by Gaza's government, which is Hamas. They started this war of choice to kill 1,000 Israelis for little to no reason, unarmed civilians at a music festival. And as a result, they ended up getting blown to smithereens. Like, they're just experiencing the natural consequences of their own actions. Quite frankly. And, obviously any amount of civilian suffering is a tragedy, but when you look at what Hamas does, they prevent people from evacuating areas that are about to get bombed. Like, they prevent people from Like they hoard food that's given to them by the West as aid. They hoard aid money and they use it to build rockets. They use it to build tunnels that they hold hostages in, right? Like ultimately, at the end of the day, most of the suffering that happens to Gazans is caused by other Gazans, specifically Hamas. And you can make arguments about, oh well, they use excessive force here. But at the end of the day, it's like they went out of their way to protect civilians. And this is something that a lot of countries that go to war, Russia, don't do at all. So you can't really say that they're committing a genocide if they're actively trying to protect civilian lives. And you can criticize Netanyahu, obviously. Most Israelis don't really like Netanyahu. But when you're constantly bringing up things that are objectively not true, like the USS Liberty being deliberate, like it really damages your credibility. And it makes me hard to take you seriously.
I think that's a great answer, because I think that when you see people who are making legitimate right-wing criticisms of Israel, and I have friends who do that, they're talking about foreign aid, they're talking about the socialist economy of Israel, but the people who are lying about things like the USS Liberty incident, the people who make up or repeat older Nazi talking points about the Jews, that's what they'll do, is they'll sprinkle in the truth with the lies. And that's when you can tell someone is not trying to make a legitimate principled argument against, say, foreign aid, is that they'll typically bring up something completely unrelated to it. And that's when you know that they're not, actually being objective. But this fight isn't even about left or right anymore, Sam. AP has documented a very public conservative split. So the Associated Press wrote about this. Tucker Carlson, Candace Owens, Ben Shapiro, Nick Fuentes, conspiracy theories surrounding Charlie Kirk's murder. What do the pro-Israel people, do you think, that they still don't understand about why young libertarians, why American first conservatives are becoming suspicious of Israel? Because if we act like every question is anti-Semitism, don't we risk driving them straight into the arms of the actual anti-Semites, Sam?
Yeah, it's like, I think there has been some overuse of the term anti-Semitic. Like, not, when I believed in a lot of anti-Israel conspiracies, I still didn't consider myself an anti-Semite. Like, I still had Jewish friends. I still, I wasn't completely on board with Hamas, right? I just believed in things that weren't true. And I think something that the pro-Israel movement needs to get better at is addressing the concerns of people that have fallen for some of these anti-Israel talking points, and actually trying to show them the truth of what happened, rather than just simply alienating them by calling them anti-Semitic. That's something that we really need to focus on. I think there needs to be more outreach to Generation Z. I know there's been a lot of disinformation slop on Instagram, on TikTok, on Twitter, on all these platforms that are used by young people that are telling them things that are objectively not true about what happened in Gaza, about Israel's involvement in the Iraq War, other things. That needs to be our focus, is reaching out to young people and countering disinformation slop.
Now, last one, I want you to talk directly to the Sam Brown from 2 years ago. This will be a fun exercise. And talk to the guy watching us right now who sounds exactly like him. He thinks Israel manipulates America. He thinks Zionism is a dirty word. He thinks the libertarian position is wash our hands of the whole thing. And he thinks you got sucked into propaganda when you changed sides. They think that I got sold out as well. So you get 60 seconds with that guy, Sam. What is the thing that you would tell him to go look at himself before he decides he already knows the truth?
I would say read up on Israeli history. Read up on what happened in the lead up to Israeli independence, where the UN had a partition plan which would have explicitly given both a Jewish and an Arab state in what is now considered to be Israel-Palestine. And all the Arab leadership said, no, we're not going to allow this to happen. Even though it gave the Arabs way more land than they have nowadays, it gave them almost all of what is now Israel-Palestine, except for Tel Aviv and Haifa. And yet the Arabs shot it down. They refused to participate in any agreement that would allow for a Jewish state. And that's why you have all the wars that keep happening between Israel and their Arab neighbors. It's the reason that was the reasoning behind the 1948 war. It's the reasoning behind the 67 war, behind the Yom Kippur war. All of this is that they just simply will not accept the existence of a Jewish state. And I would say to my past self think for yourself. Don't just believe this because everyone else around you believes this. Okay, like I want you to do some critical thinking. Actually read up on the history of the region before Israeli independence. Read up on early Israeli independence. Read up on the Second Intifada, where in response to the Oslo Accords, where there was going to be some sort of promise of a Palestinian state, Palestinian terrorists decided to unleash a wave of suicide bombings across Israel. Right? Like, you got to fundamentally realize that Israel can't really be like Canada or Sweden. They're constantly being threatened on almost all ends. And that's why they engage in all these military actions.
Well, I think that your old self, Sam, would probably say to the new self, "You Zionist traitor! You've been kicked out of the Ron Paul movement for life." Sam, that was a great interview. I think people really enjoyed it. Is there anything else that you'd like to share or plug before we let you go today, sir?
Well, I just want to say, my Twitter is at SB for Liberty. My Instagram is American Lemmy. I'm starting up a YouTube channel also called SB for Liberty. If you want to check out my stuff, you can go on all of those platforms.
There we go. Sam Brown. Hey, man, good work out there. We'd love to have you back again sometime. Have a great day.
You too.
That's Sam Brown. Follow him over on X at SB. He's another For Liberty guy. SB for Liberty. I'm AP for Liberty. This is the For Liberty Network. What a great show today, guys. I thought this was fun. I enjoyed it. Phil Magness, Sam Brown, talking about 3D printing. I can't wait to get my, after this is over, I'm going to hang my sweet baseball cap holder on the wall that I 3D printed last night. So if you missed that part of the conversation, guys, say you just tuned in and you missed me talking about 3D printing, the revolution that's going on, that was in the first hour. So make sure you run it back and check out that part because that was a really good conversation. Okay. Now, somebody tweeted at me. They said, everything you wrote, and when I wrote, I was talking about the foreign policy stuff here, basically what we were just talking about, says, will only appeal to know-nothing establishment, Fox News, neocon Republicans, which is the audience you have sold out to cater to. The foreign policy you now advocate for is inherently un-American, and you have ruined your reputation to make a few bucks. Damn it. My reputation. My poor reputation. I gotta say, guys, the money in podcasting is in catering to retards and third worldists. It's not in what's standing up for what's true or good or pure or right. So, Soul Blog, you made it. The show's over. But if you like this, and if you want to support podcasting that caters to people who believe in what is true and what is good and what is pure and it is right, can we do it? Can I do a little grifting? Head over to forlibertyshop.com. You just said to yourself, man, Austin's finally telling it like it is. Somebody's actually out there doing it. I'm going to support him financially. Let's get a little grift on. Head over to forlibertyshop.com. That's the number 4, libertyshop.com. Check out all the incredible products that we have available for sale, like the Don't Spy on Me hoodie, or perhaps you want to relive the glory days of your grandma or your mom, if you're like me and you're old. AUH2O, the Goldwater t-shirts now in shop, 1964. Only at forlibertyshop.com. That's the number 4, libertyshop.com. Have you guys seen the awesome 1776 Betsy Ross Stars clutch bag that we have? Stephanie made it for the ladies out there. My 1776 wallet has the same design for the guys. The Betsy Ross Stars wallet available at forlibertyshop.com. So if you want to support what is good, what is true, what is pure, what is right, head over to forlibertyshop.com, make a purchase, and help support the For Liberty Network, where we have 6 live shows, and we'll see you right back here tomorrow. This is the Wake Up America show, and you're watching the For Liberty Network. Bye, guys.
Tis the year of our Lord, 1801. President Trump Jefferson casts his gaze o'er the sovereign Potomac and beholds a most wretched spectacle upon the waters. From the cursed shores of Tripoli and the welfare coffers of distant Minnesota comes the brazen Captain Ilhan Omar, commanding her fleet of Barbary pirates. She demands her ransom, billions in reparations. Yet one instrument of fortitude suffices, a steaming chalice of Jeffersonian Java, bold and unapologetic from For Liberty Shop. No more tribute to rogues, he thunders, and
dispatches the Navy and Marines to smash Omar's fleet asunder. Trump Jefferson stands triumphant as Omar's plunder meets the end it deserved back in Minnesota. Jeffersonian Java, the coffee that gives true Americans the courage to refuse tribute and rebuke fraud. Procure yours at forlibertyshop.com and make America caffeinated again.
Hark! I've discovered a brew so bold, 'twill ignite the spirit of liberty. This is not merely coffee, 'tis the very essence of American boldness. Give me coffee, or give me death. Go to For Liberty Shop to procure yours now.
In a city where businesses never sleep, the technology still crashes. When technology turns criminal, they send up the signal. He's not a myth, and he's definitely not your nephew who knows computers. He installs, he protects, he backs it up, he keeps your business online and out of trouble. Managed IT, security, cloud, support that actually answers the phone. Layer 8 tech. When your network breaks, he wakes. Call Drew before your tech needs a rescue signal.
George Washington spent 8 years making sure nobody knew where he was. Troop movements, secret dispatches. The man was a ghost. So when a barista leaned out a window and asked for his exact location in exchange for points they called stars, he looked at his flag and said, "I've already got my stars. 13 of them. Keep your dignity and your location intact. Grab a box of Washington's Revolutionary Roast at forlibertyshop.com.